Hi everybody, my name is Liba. Welcome back to my channel, Learn English with Listening. Today, we're going to talk about 10 ways to start talking in English. Let's get started. Identify objects around you in English target language. The first way to stop translating in your head is to identify the objects around you in your. So, if you're studying English, that means you look at the objects around the room. Look at the things in your life. Don't think of them in your native language first. Think of them in your target language first. For example, if I look around the room and see a computer, I shouldn't think of the word in my native language. Instead, I should think of the word in my target language. Start with the items and the situations in your everyday life. If I say computer in English, maybe I should say computer in Japanese. If I think of water in English, I should say omu in Japanese, though I don't know the exact word. So, start associating the words in your target language with your everyday life. If you're studying English, start getting familiar with the things in your everyday life in English. Repeat phrases you hear. Native speakers use. Tip number 2 is to repeat the phrases that you hear native speakers use. If you're watching this channel, for example, or you're watching a TV show or a movie, listen to the way native speakers form their phrases. If you hear a phrase you've never heard before, or if you hear an interesting combination of words, try to repeat them yourself. Don't just listen, try to say them yourself. If you're in a public space and it's difficult to practice, find a place where you feel more comfortable. Maybe practice in a private space. Just repeat the phrases and get your mouth used to saying the words the way native speakers do. If you never actually say words, if you're only taking them in or only listening, but you're not actually producing the language, it's hard to practice and improve your pronunciation. When you listen to native speakers, try to repeat after them. For example, if you're studying English, you can try to repeat after this video. Repeat the things I'm saying because I might be using an expression or a combination of vocabulary words in a way that native speakers would. It's a good idea to practice the way native speakers put their words together. You can also do this with books. Try reading interesting lines out loud or tackle something that's challenging for you. It's very useful practice. Make a situation where you can't escape into your native language. Creating a situation where you can't escape into your native language essentially means immersing yourself. Of course, going to a country where the language is spoken or to a place where you can use only that language might be difficult for some of you. I totally understand. However, if you can create a situation in your library, room, house, or anywhere for just an hour, or even a whole day if possible, you'll make significant progress. If you create an environment where you have no choice but to use the language you're studying, it forces you to rely on it. Avoid using your native language as a crutch. For example, you can set a rule to not use your native language at all during that time. If you're lucky enough to live in a place where people speak the language you're studying, that's great. But you need to go out and interact with people. Put yourself in situations where you have no choice but to speak. It's hard, scary, and embarrassing at first. But if you find environments where you feel comfortable making mistakes and asking questions, it's incredibly valuable for your learning process. This is something I did myself. My Japanese wasn't very good for a long time, but then I started making friends who couldn't speak English. I found a hobby, joined a group, and eventually joined a school where everything was taught only in Japanese. The people in my class mostly spoke only Japanese, and we'd even go out for drinks and food late at night or on the weekends. This immersion helped me a lot. Japanese. If I couldn't communicate, even simply in Japanese, I had no hope of keeping that friendship together. So, it forced me to study. It forced me to think about the words they were using and to try to learn those words, those patterns, as well as how to produce them naturally myself. I was learning the vocabulary words the people around me were using and learning how to apply them on my own. That was only possible because I had no escape in those situations. So, try to do that, even if you can create such situations yourself in your house. It's super helpful, I think. Watch TV and movies in your target language without subtitles. Tip number 4 is to watch TV and movies in your target language without subtitles. Watching with subtitles can be very beneficial. If you're watching something with subtitles on, great. However, sometimes I find that I focus too much on reading the subtitles and forget to listen. If you've seen a movie in your target language a few times with subtitles, try turning the subtitles off. Pay attention to the character's body language and the words they're using. You can always look up unknown words in a dictionary later. Try to focus completely on the way people use their words without relying on subtitles. Another helpful trick is to turn on closed captions in the target language. For example, if I'm studying Japanese, I turn on Japanese closed captions. This allows me to see the actual words spoken while hearing them at the same time. So, there are 2 points here. 1. Watch movies without subtitles in your native language. 2. Watch movies with closed captioning in your target language, not your native language. Try these techniques with TV shows and movies. Don't bring a dictionary to your lesson. Tip number 5 is, don't bring a dictionary to your lesson. Okay, give me a second here. Dictionaries, especially electronic ones on our phones, are very convenient. They're an important resource and can be very helpful. However, one thing that bothers me and is detrimental to students is when students rely on dictionaries during a lesson. For example, when practicing conversation, students may reach a point where they don't know a word in their target language. They know it in their native language, but instead of explaining, they pull out their dictionary and say, "Just a moment." They look up the word, disrupting the flow of the conversation. This isn't realistic. Imagine going to a bank to open an account in another language. Would you pull out a dictionary for every unknown word? Probably not. That's not how real conversations work. Instead, use a different strategy. If you don't know a word, try describing it to your conversation partner. Native speakers can often guess the word you're looking for and teach you. When someone takes the time to teach you a word, you're more likely to remember it than if you just look it up in a dictionary. You can bring a dictionary to your lesson, but try not to use it during the conversation. Instead, practice describing what you mean. Use phrases like, "What's the word that means?" "You know, it's the thing that does this and that." This approach allows you to learn vocabulary naturally while maintaining the flow of the conversation. Train responses to common questions. Tip number 6 is a quick one. Train responses to common questions. For example, a very common question in English is, "Hey, how are you?" You should know how to answer this question with a default response, like, "I'm good," "I'm okay," "not bad." If it takes you a long time to answer, that's a sign you need more practice. Sometimes students take too long to respond to simple questions. For example, I say, "Hey, how are you?" They pause, think, and say, "Yes, I'm good." There's no reason to be surprised by common questions like, "How are you?" or "How was your weekend?" Think about a handful of responses to these questions and practice them until they come naturally. For example, "How are you?" "I'm good." "I'm okay." "Not bad." Training quick responses to common questions will make your conversations smoother. Videos, especially beginner-level videos, for example responses. You can find videos, especially beginner-level ones, with example responses you can practice. Don't get stuck with these little questions. Just train a few responses and practice them until they feel natural to you. It will save you time and help the person asking the question move forward in the conversation. Study with materials that don't provide a translation. The next tip is to study with materials that don't provide a translation. If you're using worksheets, textbooks, or any materials that have your target language, the language you're studying, alongside your native language, it can be useful. However, I feel that studying materials entirely in your target language, with simplified explanations also in the target language, can be even more effective. I'm not saying you should completely avoid using your native language for grammar explanations or word lookups, as it can be helpful. But where possible, try to find materials with simplified explanations in your target language. This helps you think and learn in a more natural and basic way in the language you're studying. For example, you can use books and written materials, as well as video content. When choosing video materials, pay attention to the level of vocabulary used, who the content is intended for: children, young adults, adults. The speed of the speaker's speech. Some videos are designed to match different language levels. For instance, I can adjust the difficulty of my videos by changing the vocabulary I use or the rate of speech. A series like English in 3 Minutes uses simple vocabulary and a slower rate of speech, making it easier for beginners. Think about both written and audiovisual materials. Consider your level and audience when selecting resources. It can be fun and helpful to immerse yourself in your target language. Study phrases in addition to single vocabulary words. The next tip is to study phrases in addition to single vocabulary words. Vocabulary is important, of course, but looking at how a word is used in phrases can help you understand its nuance. For example, the word crazy in English can have different meanings depending on the context. It could describe someone who is mentally confused. It could mean something amazing. It could mean something negative. If you only look at the word crazy in isolation, it's difficult to understand its full meaning. However, studying it in phrases gives you a lot more information. So, pay attention to how words are used in context. not just their dictionary definitions. Studying phrases can help you grasp more about the language. Do your daily activities in English or your target language. The next tip is to do your daily activities in your target language. If you're studying English, for example, try to think or do some daily tasks in English. These could be very mundane activities like, I'm filming a video for Learn English with listening. I'm going to work. I'm cooking breakfast. I'm doing the laundry. What do I have to do tomorrow? By thinking about your everyday life in English, you can practice verbs and vocabulary. For instance, if you're at work and think, what's the verb for creating a picture? Oh, I need to draw a picture. You can check a dictionary to fill in those gaps. This practice helps you identify areas where you lack vocabulary or phrases. By reflecting on your daily activities in your target language, you might realize where those gaps exist. It's a great way to improve your skills naturally. A kind of funny, actually, way to study, use a learner's dictionary for new words. The last tip is to use a learner's dictionary for new words. In English, there are learner dictionaries available that explain words in simple English. My personal favorite channel is Learn English with Listening. If you come across a word you don't recognize, you can check it in a learner's dictionary. It provides a simplified explanation in English, instead of translating it into your native language. This approach helps you understand the word in the context of the language you're studying, rather than relying on your native language. Using a learner's dictionary can be incredibly useful. Final thoughts. So, those are 10 tips to help you stop translating in your head. I know it's very difficult, but it takes time and practice. I hope these strategies will help you as you study any language. Of course, this is an English language learning channel, but I think these tips are applicable to learning just about any language. If you've tried these strategies or have any other comments or tips, please share them in the comments section below this video. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Learn English with Listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.